Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're now on Red Circle instead of Podbean, but still on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. We typically do the post-game shows over there, so make sure you check that out. Also, check out fivereasonsports.com for the latest takeaways from Brady, Hawk, and others. We do not have a paywall, and the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. We hope you played Prize Picks today. There were a lot of easy plays. Jimmy Butler at 19.5 points. We'll see what happens on all the Dolphins plays, but you can play every sport there. You can play 2 to 6 players, flex play, power play. It's all there. The number one sports app going right now. It's Prize Picks. Make sure you use that code 5. Get your initial deposit matched up to $100. Get your initial deposit matched up to $100 at Prize Picks. Again, use that code 5, F-I-V-E. Also, check out Therapist Preferred. That is our CBD sponsor. Use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. You get 25% off the tincture, the sports cream, the gummies, all at therapistpreferred.com. It's legal. It's the best stuff. Therapistpreferred.com. Use the code 5RSN. And now, tonight's episode.
Down the bitch gang. Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for subscribing. Here's today's floor plan. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Alex Toledo. You can follow at Tropical Blanket, and Greg Sylvander. Follow him at Greg Sylvander. We're squeezing in a post-game podcast after the Heat win and close a 4-0 road trip in San Antonio, beating the Spurs comfortably at the end after some struggles during the game. We're doing this one quick here because we know a lot of people were getting to the Dolphins game tonight. We'll be back with our usual post-game streams during the week. Here's what I'm taking from this, guys. They didn't play a real good team on this trip, okay? So let's acknowledge that. We got to look at the trip in totality. But they lost to some really bad teams before this, okay? They lost to the Pistons. They lost to the Spurs at home. And this is a team that really could have crumbled, fallen apart, season gone the other direction. Instead, they're coming home a game over 500. Tyler Herro continues to play at a high level. I thought he played a high level tonight, even though he didn't shoot the ball well. Bam Adebayo is as comfortable and confident offensively as he's been as a pro. Jimmy Butler's giving them what they need, and I thought Victor Oladipo looked really good tonight, actually. I thought that this was his strongest game after we did a pod that maybe he'd found his upside. Maybe there's more there. And then they got enough from the role guys. Look, no Lowry tonight, no Vincent tonight. Strus still isn't shooting the ball particularly well. He made a couple tonight, but they got threes from Duncan Robinson. They got some good minutes from Haywood Highsmith. We hate to say it, they got Dwayne Dedmon off the floor in the second half. We'll discuss that a little bit. And Orlando Robinson gave them some minutes. And I thought this was just a professional, workmanlike performance against a crowd that, as I expected, was mostly in their favor because crowds travel, even though it was a little closer to San Antonio. I'll start with you, Greg. I just, on the overall tone of the trip, I just thought they did what they needed to do on this trip. Whenever there was a response from another team where you thought the Heat were going to fold, one of their core players stepped up and made plays, and that happened again against San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, for them to improve their road record to 7-9 starts to make that feel like a team that's gearing up to play better basketball as the season unfolds. They're now in the 7th seed. They are a game back of New York, the Knicks, for the 6th seed and being out of the play-in scenario. So right off the bat, you look there and there is already jostling in the standings to be had. Only 3 games in the loss column behind 4 or 5, Brooklyn and Philadelphia. So to me, like, these games, while they were against inferior opponents, to go out on the road, to get 4 straight, to do it with a lot of key guys playing very well, Just think it's all you could have asked for. It doesn't mean that the season has changed or turned around just yet. They need to continue to show that consistency. We keep harping on that because I think it's real. But this is the way you build the this is the prerequisite to fixing the things that we talked about needed fixing. Is you got to beat the teams you were supposed to beat. And sometimes you got to go out on the road and you got to get it done. We've seen Heat teams in the past come together and say that they came together while out on the road. And maybe this is another circumstance where that proves to be.
Brady, let's go through these players one by one here as we go forward. On this road trip, because let's take a totality of the trip instead of just one game here, because I don't think one game is that significant in the grand scheme of things. A game against a team that we all acknowledge is rebuilding with San Antonio. Let's look at the totality of the trip. I'll give you Bam. What did you like on this trip?
I feel like he's been consistently back to what he was around that run. Like there's been lows, there's been real highs, but I think we're finally kind of seeing what he's going to be consistently. And I think, Eric Reed threw out a stat on the broadcast where he was talking about his points in the paint, where he's just been dominant in there. Like we talked about his go-to shot, but like he is really finding himself as a roller on this road trip, it feels like. And I think Tyler deserves a lot of credit to that, because the Tyler Bam pick and roll has just been very good. And he's finding him on those rolls. And Bam just kind of finishing at the rim. He's doing different things in that go-to area even after the roll. And the other guy that's setting him up is the shooters, which is basically always been his thing, because we always had the topic of like Bam setting up the shooters and then the shooters setting up him. And I know you said about this road trip in general, but I really walked away from this specific game really high on Duncan Robinson. Like this game alone, because there's still the consistency factor. Like he's had these games before and it's all about kind of stringing them together. But like you got an idea of like what he looks like or what the offense looks like when he's rolling, because that looked like something from a few years ago. Like when they're running actions for him consistently, and I was going through them on Twitter where they ran a double drag for Tyler, where like Bam sent the second screen, they both flew at Tyler. Tyler threw like a one-handed skip pass to Duncan, and I think his foot was on the line on that play. A little bit later, they ran like a horns action where Duncan slips it to the opposite wing. Bam sets a pin down. Duncan hits the three. And then that very next possession, they run like a curl for Duncan, and they two fly at Duncan. He throws the pocket pass to Bam, and Bam dunks it. Like if that wasn't the blueprint of a few years ago in the old version of Duncan, I don't know what is. So when you ask me about Bam on this road trip, I just really feel like the shooters, and Tyler's included in that, really are the realm of what opens Bam up in general. As much as we talk about the Jimmy factor and them really not meshing a two-man game, the shooters are what really opens them up.
Alex, I'll give you Jimmy. What did you like on this trip?
Well, look, the Jimmy stuff, there's nothing new about what he does. Like, I just think he is as steady as they come on this team. You know what you're going to get from him. You know that you're not necessarily going to get big scoring nights throughout, that often throughout the regular season. And, the best part about Jimmy throughout this road trip is that he hasn't had to go crazy for them to be winning these games, right? So it's less about his individual play and more about the rest of the team coming up in other ways so that he doesn't have to go playoff Jimmy mode, because that's the last thing you want to see throughout the regular season, especially against these, this caliber of teams that they've been playing, is them needing him over and over and over. Now, look, he did a lot tonight. He's still good at what he's good at. He's shown that whenever they need him to, he will go and, get into his spot in the mid range. And I think that's kind of the maturation of his game, is like knowing that he can get to his spots whenever, right? And I think Tyler is kind of going through some of that now, where it's like, yeah, I don't need to do that, but I can when you need me to. And so it's less about Jimmy and more about the team figuring out how to get offense, from the other guys. And I think it's to what Brady is talking about there with Duncan. And by the way, I thought Max had a good game, even if, he didn't have the best 3-point percentage. Both of them just kind of playing in the flow of, yeah, we're going to, they're going to get these plays run for them, these actions run for them. And I think that's where the offense can really start looking a lot better, right? Instead of trying to have your best players make everything happen. If you're running these shooters off of curls and actions, and I think just making them more involved off ball, I really do think it makes just everything else easier, right? Depending on how they're running it, there's reads to make. And I think Max and Duncan have gotten, very used to making those reads. So even when those threes aren't falling, they're helping the offense out by taking those threes and, making the right pass when they're being run off of the line. So I think that aspect becoming more prominent would actually be really nice for their offense. And I think finding some spots for Duncan might make sense. And it's not just off of this game. It's just, I think he really does help their offense, move a little bit.
We talked about the threes, and obviously one of the games on this trip, they just went nuts, but they haven't gone nuts in all the games. And I thought it was important today that they were able to kind of hang in there, even though they weren't taking as high a volume of threes in this game for a period of time. And then Duncan hit the ones late. I want to get to a couple of the other guys here in a second. Again, as the Heat finish a 4-0 road trip with a win against San Antonio, they come back this week. They got a couple games 3 games prior to Christmas back here. Before we do, want to mention one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friend Lynette over at insurancebylynette.com for aggressive insurance. So go to insurancebylynette.com. 2 N's, 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com, an insurance broker agency been servicing South Florida for over 15 years. They offer auto insurance, homeowners insurance, condo insurance, life insurance. I always mention the auto insurance because if you have a bad driving record, she's the person to call. No driver is refused. So go to insurancebylynette.com. She's based kind of in the Lauderhill area, sort of in Northwest Broward. You can service the entire area. Again, no driver refused, and they represent all the leading insurance carriers in South Florida. insurancebylynette.com. Let's get to Tyler, Greg, because this was not a game where he was scorching from 3. I mean, he just did something that like nobody in league history has ever done. So there was a little much to expect him to do that again, or even anything close to it, but he still managed to score. He still had a couple of blocks that shouldn't have been called fouls. I mean, the off the ball defense where all of a sudden he thinks he's LeBron attacking on the weak side. When anybody goes to the rim, he's playing with like a certain poise and pace on the offensive end when he's making these reads, but then he is competing defensively in a way that I don't know. I feel like he competes most of the time, but I feel like there's a little bit more oomph to it of late. Yeah, this was a very good trip for him.
I agree. I feel like this is a moment where he recognizes that a part of this all working is him kind of showcasing what we know he's capable of and just taking no shit and just doing it. And you look tonight, yes, he wasn't as efficient as the last 2 games. 13 of 20 and 20 of 23 is hard to come by, I mean, for anybody. But still, if you look at what he did with 7 assists and 6 rebounds, a couple of steals. He's active. He's not getting pushed around as much. To me, I thought Tyler was the highlight of this trip because as guys are going to have to be in and out of the lineup, because I would project that Kyle's going to have nights where he has to rest. Jimmy's minutes will be monitored. You want to see Tyler be able to take on this type of burden. And Bam and Tyler have now shown that they can do that. So I think this was probably, of all players on the team, this trip meant most for Tyler Herro as we look ahead to Christmas and the new year with this Heat team.
All right, before we pivot back to the homestand, Brady, I'm going to give you Depot here because we did a whole podcast, Alex and I did the other day, and we talked about whether or not this was it, right? Like, and if this was it, was it good enough? We talked about pace. I like the pace he played with offensively. He doesn't seem to be forcing it. It almost seems like he knows he has more time now, to build back up. Whereas last year, again, as Eric Spoelstra said to me when we were in the Bahamas, he kind of jumped onto a moving train. This year, it didn't happen that way. It's not like, okay, you've got 6 weeks to get ready or 3 weeks to get ready for the playoffs. He has a longer time frame to work. It feels like he's processing that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I was looking at the stat sheet. There were 5 guys that scored more than him in this game. And I would probably say he had the best overall game tonight. Like I talked about what Duncan did on that run, but from start to finish, what he was able to do, even during the first half where the Spurs made the run, I even tweeted, I was like, I like the Oladipo Highsmith minutes just because they do really good on the top of that zone. They're both really active. They were pressing and like the Spurs were getting the offense with like 14 seconds on the shot clock. So like that was all basically Oladipo. He ends up with 5 steals tonight, and just the stuff he was doing at the end of the game defensively on the ball, one-on-one, like it's just like stuff you don't teach. Like he just has the wingspan to just be able to rip guys and do that type of stuff. He hits passing lanes. As much as we talk about the pure art that Jimmy's able to do it, like Debo has that type of skill in him as well, and he's able to create opportunities on the break because of it. And I guess all the questions come to the opposite side of the ball because we know he can close games just because of what he can do defensively. It's just about what is he going to be on the opposite side of the ball, because he's finding himself in the lineups that he's being put in, because I think he's been very good as a shot creator and playmaker. Early in this game, he had some like few miscues where he threw one behind his back and he had a couple weird plays and kind of passes, and generally he had 2 turnovers. I think those were the 2 plays in the first half. But generally he's been very good as a playmaker, getting Tyler going, getting other guys going. So I think it just comes down to what he wants to be as a scorer, because we've seen him get to that mid-range a little bit. We know what he can be as a rim pressure guy. Is that still in him? He's really willing to take the catch, shoot 3. So once he figures out like what his primary skill is in the half court, then that'll take him to the next level, because the defensive and the playmaking stuff is sitting there. What are we, 6 games in?
Yeah, 6 games in. And like you said, the defensive stuff looks great at this stage. I got one more for Alex when we come back, and I'm going to put him on the spot here a little bit, which I know he doesn't like, but that's okay. We will close that way. Before we do, I want to tell you about one more sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Sponsors all of our post-game shows when they're over on the YouTube channel. It's ODM Performance Solutions. Go to odmpsi.com. Team building is hard. Just look at what the Spurs are trying to do right now to build the thing back up. ODM PSI can help you build a winning team and keep it together. If you're looking to fill an important role in your company, ODM PSI can help you find C-suite level leadership, sales rainmakers, plus management and operational support staff. To find out more, check out odmpsi.com. Again, that's odmpsi.com, or give them a call at 954-434-0634. All right, Alex, I'm giving you the upcoming schedule here coming home, and then we close. The Bulls, the Pacers, the Wolves, the Lakers at home. 4-game homestand. Okay. All of those teams are beatable right now. Okay. I mean, this was the stretch of the schedule. We thought that they could rack up some wins. We know that the Bulls kind of in this weird space where Zach LaVine's getting a lot of heat up there. It looks like they may go the other direction now. The Pacers have come back to earth a little bit. The Wolves haven't had Towns and Gobert. And the Lakers, you just don't know who. I mean, obviously with LeBron, you never know if he's even going to play in Miami. So we'll see how that one goes on the 28th. That's before the Heat go out to Denver, Jazz, Clippers, Lakers, Suns, which is a much more challenging stretch of games. I will ask you this as the performance solution to roll through these games. Give me the number 1 key, other than maybe shelving Dwayne Dedmon for a little while so that they don't have that big minus. And we saw that he hurt his ankle at the end of the game. Give me 1 key here.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's good that you said that, so you can just get that out the way, because that's kind of the obvious one at this point. Like the guy, he doesn't need to be playing through plantar fasciitis, but like you said there, they just got through the easiest part of their schedule and they took care of business on the back half of it. Luckily, since it just went so poorly before, but now these 4 games are definitely winnable. Like none of these teams are hot at the moment. I guess the hottest are the Lakers, which are 5-5 in the last 10. So, none of these teams are necessarily killing it right now. You should be able to win 2 or 3 of these at least. I think if you're really trying to get yourself back up there as a team that thinks of itself as a contender or something close to it, then try to win 2 or 3 out of these. Like I think you already had that opening night loss to the Bulls, and I don't think they're going to lose to the Bulls again. We've seen them lose to the Pacers before. They could get hot from 3. The Timberwolves are playing without Towns, so they don't have as much size, and maybe they're better off without it as a team defense. We'll just see. The thing with this team is they're so unpredictable. Like if they went 2-2, I wouldn't be surprised. If they went 1-3, I wouldn't be surprised. If they went 3-1, I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like most likely all of these games are going to be close, and so it's going to come down to the margins. So all of that is just a long-winded way to say execute in the margins. There's no one thing. Their transition defense is bad, and that's not going to get fixed in a couple of home games. Like the teams get out the most against them. So I guess the key is to try to not miss so many shots so teams aren't killing you in transition. I just like what I've been seeing, though. You know what I mean? The rotation stuff has been good and going in the right direction. And the way that they're leveraging shooters, I think, is going in the right direction as well. That's the stuff that I'm more interested in.
I think we hit it at the beginning. They need to go a different direction at the backup 5, because those are the minutes that are killing them consistently. And I like what I've seen from Orlando Robinson enough that I want to see a little bit more. We don't know where it goes, but it can't be worse. Dwayne Dedmon was terrific for them 2 seasons ago. He was okay in spots last year. He is unplayable at this stage. I don't see how you can keep running him out there when every time you come back, Bam comes back in, there's a 12-point swing from when he was in the last time. Can
I say something quick? Just to what I was saying before, the Heat got beat in the fast break by 10 tonight. And also just something quick that we didn't talk about before I put it on our off the floor feed. The Heat shot profile was really different from what it's been all season. They took 25 shots at the rim, 26 in the mid range, and 30 from 3. So I don't know if that's going to be something that trends at all. It could just be a 1-game thing because the Spurs are the worst defensive rating in the league. But it's nice to see them kind of balance it out where the threes aren't, the attempts from 3 aren't outweighing the shots at the rim by so much.
And Bam continues to dominate inside the paint, which is probably worth an entire episode as we go forward. Thanks to Alex. Thanks to Greg. Thanks to Brady. Thanks to our sponsors, Aggressive Insurance, insurancebyLynette.com, ODM PSI, Therapist Preferred. Use the code 5RSN. Prize Picks. Use the code 5. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.